Thank you, Karen. Good morning, everyone. Welcome this beautiful day and welcome to today's wellness that's hosted by the First Nations Health Director Association. I'd like to acknowledge the many territories on which we're collectively gathered today. I'm joining you today from my unceded territory of Sycas First Nation. That's the geographical center of BC. It's a balmy 4 degrees. We have no snow. I'm looking forward to the sun as probably everyone else is. My name is Regina Thomas and I'm the health director for my community of Sycas. I became a First Nations health director member in 2018 when I began my tenure of health director. And I've served on the First Nations Health Director Board since September of 2020 as a North Central representative for the Northern region. Today we're welcome Karina Chase from First Nations Health Authority, First Nations Addiction Partnership Manager, and Jami Dye from the BC Centre for Substance Abuse Use. I'm very excited to learn that First Nations Health Authority and the BC Centre for Substance Use about how as health directors we can learn to have more courageous conversations and help hard to have conversations, especially when it's involving our loved ones, our nieces, our nephews, our cousins, our uncles, sometimes our parents. So I'm really looking forward today. The team is also available to support BC First Nations communities to mitigate the risks of opioid drug poisoning. They educate community members on new innovative life-saving treatments and hold safe spaces, which are so incredibly important for those with lived drug use experience and also the family members to share their stories. We all know that probably each and all of us here on this meeting today has been touched by a drug overdose or an opioid story, especially in our Native communities. They're also working to build capacity in the community by providing tools to destigmatize language and practice lateral kindness through transformative dialogue. At this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Karina and Jami. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Regina. That was really beautiful, and I really appreciated just grounding us in medicine and opening us up with, open heart and an open mind as we dive into these courageous conversations, and close we all are to uncertainty. And we have community members dying every single day. So thank you. I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'm going to introduce my colleagues who I work with in this work. So my name is Karina Chase, and I'm the First Nations Addictions Care Partnership Manager with First Nations Health Authority and the BC Centre on Substance Use. So my role is 50-50. The BC Centre on Substance Use does research in harm reduction to people, for people who have substance use disorder. And that's opioids, that's stimulants, that's alcohol. And so I take that information and I streamline. So I am Métis and Scottish. My family comes from the Algonquin people, and I live here on the traditional lands of the Kakite people here in New Westminster. We've been doing courageous conversations for the last few years, virtually since COVID. And I'm really grateful to be able to do this work with my colleague Sikani. I'm going to pass the feather to Sikani and then pass it over to Jami, and then we'll start our PowerPoint. So go ahead, Sikani. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sikani. I'm from the Decolonizing Nation. I'm currently on the beautiful lands of my relatives and cousins on the Nakazi-Wooten, which is just the band right next to ours. So I feel really blessed to be on this land and to really look at it and look at the water and know that like my ancestors have touched this water for millenniums. But what I do here is I am working with FNHDA on facilitation and consultation basis. And I really help my expertise and my lived experience to the table, and how to translate that knowledge that I've gained through my various parts of my life, and bring it so that we can talk about these conversations in a really good way and have someone with lived experience at the tables when we're creating these conversations and workshops. I wonder if the host can turn the dinger off. I don't know if we know that dinger can go off. The doorbell, the dinger, the doorbell, but yeah.
Tracy County, it's a Zoom thing, we can't.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Thank you. Awesome. So thank you, and thank you everybody for joining us. And I just hope to be able to what I always say for these conversations is we shoot for compassion and we hope for empathy, and hope that it leads to empathy. So yeah, that's me and Jamie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Jami Dye. I'm from the Nasco Nation, which is just outside of Quesnel, Dalcath, on both sides of my family. My mom is Nasco and my dad is Nakasley. And I have lived down here. I'm on the unceded territory of the Tsleil-Waututh, the Musqueam, and the Squamish Nation. And I've lived down here for like going on to 10 years now. So I work on a mental health team with MCFD on a child and youth mental health team. And I've been with Courageous Conversations, like I'm very new to this. So I'm here today to just kind of talk about at some point what my role in Courageous Conversation is going to be moving forward, and to introduce myself to you guys as the person who will be running parts of the support programs available to people in community. So I'm really grateful to be here, and I look forward to hearing this conversation. This is my first time attending a Courageous Conversations webinar, so I'm very curious to see what my colleagues have in store for me and for you, and I'm looking forward to moving forward in this journey with everybody. So thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. After the presentation, membership support team will prompt any questions from the health directors posted in chat. So if you have any questions, comments, you can raise your hand or you can post it in the chat. Thanks.
All right, so Courageous Conversations on Substance Use is a partnership between First Nations Health Authority and the BC Centre on Substance Use. We do have an elder that joins the webinars, and she helps us just lead from that open heart and an open mind. And she also brings a woman who worked in community for over 30 years, and she just brings this grace and wisdom when she shares. So moving forward, we can't do the work without her. So today, unfortunately, she isn't with us, but we're really happy to say that she is with her family, enjoying some wellness time. So we're really grateful to her. That's Doreen Peter from Cowichan. We do have Sekani as an expert in people with lived and living experience with substance use, and also family members who have passed from drug harms. Jami Dye, we are contracting Jami through First Nations Health Authority as a clinical therapist, and she's partnering with Sotalalem as for cultural support in healing or sharing from the heart. So we also have Samantha, who is going to be hopping on. She is going to be speaking to you about Moms Stop the Harm. If you're not familiar with that organization, how you can reach out, and it's a collective, and it's collective nationally to support people who have lost loved ones to drug harms. So we're going to just take a moment if you want to make a land acknowledgement in the chat, just trying to be engaging with you all. We're really grateful and honored to be here. This is really heavy work, and we know every single day families are impacted by this drug crisis that we're in. So we do have this warning. This is the same kind of slide deck that we would be presenting in community. So we work with community members, and we ask them if having courageous conversations is something that they want to do, something that they're ready for. And these conversations within the internal teams in community, that can take anywhere from 1 month to 4 months, just really working to build relationships and understanding that this is emotional labor, that everything that we do, when we talk about our experience, it can feel laborious. And if you do feel triggered, then we do have supports. All right. So what is stigma? I'm going to ask Sekani to take this slide. Sekani, can you talk about stigma that you experienced? I mean, we know that stigma is a primary reason why people don't access healthcare services or talk to family and loved ones because of the shame. Maybe, Sekani, you can tell us about a time that you experienced some stigma.
Sure. Like it says there, it says, stigma is defined as like a kind of a mark of disgrace, associated with a particular circumstance or quality of a person. I always like to like when that term intersectionality was coined, I'm sure a lot of folks are familiar with it. But what it means to me, I'm somebody who's transgendered. I used drugs throughout my transition, so I was involved in a lot of street life. I was precariously homeless, low income. So I found like sometimes it was hard to find out, to identify what they were stigmatizing me for. But often I would be stigmatized at like the healthcare center, at our local Indigenous healthcare center in Vancouver, at the hospital with paramedics. And a lot of it was, I noticed, associated with my postal code. So because I was living in a shelter, I was living in the downtown east side, they would be like, where are you from? And then I would tell them, and they would often, start asking really weird questions or being very rude to me, like asking, like, for example, assuming that I'm on drugs. Like, yeah, I was taking drugs, but not all of them. And they would always ask, oh, how long have you been using needles? And I never used needles when I was down there, and they just assumed that I did, and it was often these assumptions that would make me feel bad and make me feel like I was othered and that I didn't deserve healthcare or that I wasn't worthy of healthcare. And oftentimes, I wouldn't go back, and I would say to myself, well, what's the point? I would have to like stand up for myself while I'm feeling like I need help. I don't know how many folks have had to feel like they were very vulnerable and also had to stand up for yourself. That's a hard situation, but I find that with those situations and how I conduct and live my life now, I feel like that I fought so much, and I fought for my place in society, and that it means so much to me right now. So like, again, just, I don't know, stigma I feel like has no place anywhere, just because it's something that, like, when you look at a person, you don't have to like slap all those labels on them. You can take them off. Sure, it's good to know what pronouns are, who they are, but if I go in and my knee hurts, you don't need to know about who I'm having sex with, right?
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. That was so powerful. You just touched on so many different points about stigma, and I think we're going to dive into that a little bit through this slide, and I really appreciate that. So structural stigma, going into the hospitals and being discriminated against, and we know Indigenous people, they also deal with racism, which is also highlighted with cultural safety and humility. So if we put it in context, we'll have racism at the top, and then under the racism, we'll have people experiencing stigma on top of that. So we have stigma with structures, social stigma, and this is a really interesting phenomena, is the self-stigma. And me too, as a person with lived and living experience of illicit substances, I think that the self-stigma that I experienced, it's like that self-fulfilled prophecy. So my environment is telling me that I was no good, that they basically had given up on me because my substance use was in really harmful, hazardous stage. I couldn't be trusted. I wasn't reliable. And also I was quite estranged from the people that I loved. And I did that intentionally because it hurt me too much to watch me hurt them. But the self-stigma and shame, I think, kept me so much in my use. And I just want to highlight that. All right, so Sakani, when we talk about stereotypes, and I know that you highlighted that, like removing the labels, but let's talk about attitude. So it's like people, I think, construct thought processes and ideas about people, but how harmful is that in the health settings? Like, how is this impacting people who are trying to get access to supports?
Honestly, though, I can probably talk definitely a lot about this and probably shoot up a whole TikTok on it. But I think the harm translates to, like, for example, because of my lived experience, there were often people that I walked beside, other trans folks that were in the same similar situations like me. We were outcasts, and we were kind of my sisters who were on the street, and has so much barriers for them, and to be them to make feel like they don't are worthy or they don't belong. It makes to be able to go in. I know that's not colleagues, and they talk about how when they go into and I want to go back a little bit, just talk about structural stigma and self-stigma and societal stigma a little bit. They go back into the emergency, and often people would be stigmatized, like the nurse or somebody checking in would just treat them very rudely and very rough. and they would stand up for themselves. And then the nurse or somebody there would say, oh, well, you know, if you're going to talk back, or if you're going to not listen to us or be disrespectful, we can get the security guards to escort you out. We don't have to give you health care, which are exact words that were said, not to just one peer, to many peers, and even to myself at one time. And for them to take their own personal stigma into their workplace, and then to use the structural, the policy to reinforce that stigma, it really impacts people who are living very precariously and roughly right now. And I know when I look out in the screen and just like knowing that a lot of Indigenous folks, our numbers are so much higher out there. So it's hard for me to not say, like, you know, we all have family members that are out there struggling. We would not want them to keep struggling and having to put up with stigma when they don't need to. It's not needed in the workplace.
Thank you, Sakana. So as we've been going around the province and leading this work, we know that people are hurting, and we talk about ways that will help them. Different communities have highlighted different ways to do that work. Our elder, Doreen, she shares a story about her community in Cowichan that started an elders program, an outreach elders program to go to the housing encampments where some people who are challenged with substance use disorder live, but they started doing singing and drumming and bringing culture to the people there. And then now this has continued, and people are starting to connect and feel loved, and they look forward to. We have to open our heart to understand that if they have attitudes towards acceptance, respect, equitable treatment of people with substance use problems. Reducing stigma and discrimination will only improve the relationships. People will come in with more trust. You could host like a workshop, or maybe have a town hall, or maybe have a session about destigmatizing language, or if you'd like more resources to learn about how to do that, type that in the box. We're just trying to get an idea about where people are at to have courageous conversations. And in the conversation, I think that's where the ability. Reducing stigma does require a change in behaviors and attitudes towards acceptance, respect, equitable treatment of people with substance use problems. Reducing stigma and discrimination will only improve the relationships. People will come in with more trust, and they feel more respected and valued. So we're going to ask all of our wonderful participants just to maybe type something in the chat box about different ways you could do. You could host like a workshop, or maybe have a town hall, or maybe have a session about destigmatizing language, or if you'd like more resources to learn about how to do that, type that in the box. We're just trying to get an idea about where people are at to have courageous conversations. And in the conversation, I think that's where the magic happens, because people with lived and living experience are often empowered and feel that, you know, they have a place, and they are advising on the practices to help address stigma, lateral violence, and understand the methods of harm reduction. Sekani, can you speak about this?
Muted. I'm doing the mute thing, right? I'm just going to read the quote and then talk a little bit about it. So when a powerful oppressor has directed oppression against a group for a period of time, members of the oppressed group feel powerless to fight back, and they eventually turn their anger against each other. So this is a little bit about, this is kind of leading into lateral oppression, you know, and that, you know, we look around at our communities, Indigenous communities especially. This I feel like, I don't know if this person is Indigenous. I don't know. I should have researched him or this person a little bit more. Jane Middleton Moz. I should have researched that person a little bit more because I don't know who they are. But you know, oppression, I feel like transcends, and you know, when one race feels that oppression, it's similar to the next race. Not meaning that we had similar experiences or that we're supposed to feel the same at the other end of the oppression. But I kind of look at that. I remember when I first learned that word disenfranchised, and I didn't know what that meant. And I remember hearing like the person who did funding for a nonprofit talk about it all the time. And she talked about disenfranchised. And I'm like, what is she talking about? Why is she saying I'm disenfranchised? And then she kind of explained it to me, and I'm like, oh, so basically it means that the oppressor, you know, came here, took everything from us, and then essentially destroyed the fabric of our society. And now basically we're having to depend on them, you know, and that's what I took it to mean. I don't know if that's the exact definition, but that to me was my understanding of it. So when I look at that quote, that's what I think, you know, we're disenfranchised and we're living under and having to take direction from the person who oppressed us, you know. And I know that for a lot of us, like even myself, I internalized it a lot. Like I hated myself. I did not like Indigenous people at all. I didn't like myself. How could I like anyone else, right? Mainly because of the negative reinforced kind of image of who we are and how much, and the over-representation of us struggling, you know, in society. So when we would turn on the news back in my day when I was growing up, if there were any news about Indigenous people, it was all about how much we're struggling, and they would show pictures and media of drunk Indigenous people or people using drugs or people living like sleeping in the gutter, you know. So I took that in and I believed all that, and I said, oh well, you know what, when I got to that point when I was sleeping in the gutter, I felt like my whole life and everything was like, that's where I belonged, and maybe that's where I'll stay, right?
Yeah,
You guys add anything?
that's so powerful. Thank you for sharing that, Sekani. So we talk about healing and people who are impacted with substance use disorder and their family members and their community members. Like, how do we do this? How do we look at everything that's happened and begin that walk forward? And we really have to, I think, open our hearts and minds based on we're scared as family members. We're scared that our loved one will die. We're scared. Sometimes they do behaviors that are hurtful, and yet we don't want to give up on them. I think that coming together and even, you know, talking about the white elephant in the room can be hard. And we have created a Courageous Conversations toolkit that we are just completing. But in the meantime, we're hosting these in communities so people can feel and normalize a conversation that is normally secretive and shameful. And we're asking people to get vulnerable, because when we get vulnerable, we can open our heart and really share from our spirit about what we need, and coming to that place of love and compassion. So I'm gonna just go through a couple of slide decks about the overdose crisis. There isn't safe, culturally safe treatments available throughout the province. We know systemic racism is a huge barrier. And we also know that many people don't trust the health systems, and also fear going and accessing services from people within the cities from their urban home. This is some old FNHDA data. You can see the disparities of Indigenous to non-Indigenous, but in 5 weeks ago, the Deputy Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Nell Wyman, was with Lisa Lapointe, the Chief Coroner of BC, and they were in Victoria announcing the overdose data. And so it's increased now. It used to be 5 people a day, and right now it's 7 people a day. Things are progressively worsening. So this is why we're looking at how to embrace these conversations. And even though, in spite of doing this work, I'm going to pass this one over to Sekani because she speaks so beautifully. Sekani, can you talk about the work and even the ongoing colonial traumas that continue to happen?
Yeah, I can talk. Oh, sorry, I'm reverbing. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Yeah, when we look at this slide, I know that a lot of folks are very familiar with the 215 and the children being found in various residential schools. And there's so many great Indigenous elders and healers and medicine people that are doing work on the ground right now to help people bring this trauma forward, bring it to light, and help to start not trying to, digest it. One thing I noticed throughout this whole process is that, a lot of our elders, like our elders in our community, have been talking about this kind of, these graves and these little ones and what they went through for years, and they were not believed. And then, the ground penetrating radar started to confirm that. And then the whole world started to believe and started to look. Now that we're believed, now we get to start to grieve. We get to start to have that grieving process because it's been put on hold for generations now. Not that we didn't believe it, it's that the world didn't believe us. There's really something big about being acknowledged and being recognized. It is something that's so powerful to people. And I think about that trauma that's happening right now and how it, and also people being isolated due to the pandemic. And then I look at those numbers that Karina just shared. And if we think of all these things and add them all together, it's not a really good recipe. And us, really having these very frank, sometimes conversations with people and families is going to be really important for the years to come, so that when something like so much trauma is released at the same time, that we can be ready and we can be here to lean on each other. Because at the end of all this, we need to be able to lean on each other.
Thank you, Sekani. I just have to pause for a moment because that was so profound, and I think you're right. We have to lean on each other. So decolonizing drug use. So First Nations Health Authority, I know that there has been a lot of work since I started working almost 3 years there, but we're just looking at language and understanding some of the structural contributions for like systemic racism and structural racism. when we work to decolonize drug use, we do understand that this is a natural response to cope with trauma. And I know that was my story. When things felt so heavy, I medicated, and that was my environment. And that I think that for a lot of people, it's a natural response. And so if that is so, then why do we shame people? Why do we do that? So you can see on the addiction slide, trauma, grief, loss, and Zakani, you just really beautifully expressed so much in that grief and loss over the trajectory of colonization since first contact, and then now with the ongoing traumas. So that just highlights people's, how are we coping through COVID? How are a lot of people I know have, well, I know this is a fact, alcohol sales have gone up dramatically throughout the province since COVID. And because of the illicit manufacturing of opioids, we have 7 people dying per day. And what we're asking in this work is about connection. How do we connect? And though we might have bad feelings or scared feelings or hurt feelings towards other people, we need to kind of show up and recognize that that they too have that story. And we want them to be able to express that. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about how we can work at stigmatizing harm reduction. We do that a lot with language. And Sekani, can you talk about some of your experiences with language and how it just feels like maybe the difference? I think that would be really great to identify how hurtful language can maybe invite or elicit more shame versus, language that is more inclusive of people's self-determination and identifying first person centered care.
Talk a little bit. That's a lot, Karina.
Okay, sorry.
I'll talk about as much as I can. So I think that when I'm hoping that a lot of people are familiar with that term using people first language. So when we talk about people, we don't talk about who they are or what they do. We acknowledge that they're a person first. So when we talk about somebody, the old term used to be drug user. Now we say people who use substances or drugs. Not saying that the people that we are serving that are receiving the harm reduction would use the same language. It's a lot to do with like kind of language reclamation. Like people who use substances can call themselves whatever they want. I remember for the longest time identifying myself as a crackhead, not meaning that it's okay for like other people, like the counselor or the person who's giving me the services, to use the same language. I think when we're talking about other people, we want to acknowledge that they're people first, because often, I always say this, like I have a lot of like labels sometimes. So that's why usually, like when I introduce myself when I'm not working, I don't go up to people and say like, "Hi, I'm Sekani. I'm a trans person who has sex work experience, who's lived a low income lifestyle for a long time." I just say I'm Sekani, because I'm hoping that they don't have to use those labels all the time. And oftentimes those labels are like stickers. You could put them on people and you can cover up the fact that there's a person underneath all those labels. And that's when like the stigmatizing kind of conversations can seep into society and into our workplaces, because we're not acknowledging that they're people. So if they're not people, we can talk about them however we want, right? So that's why when like going back to some other slides, of things that we can do when we're in the workspace or in any space, oftentimes, like I remember I mentioned earlier about people who are struggling and people who cannot advocate for themselves when they're feeling like they are themselves when they're feeling like people that aren't able to advocate for themselves when they're unwell. If we're able to stand up for someone else in society, I say do it, but do it in a way that it used to be called calling out people. I don't know if you've heard this term, but calling out somebody would be saying like, putting them on blast and saying, you know, what you said wasn't cool, and telling the whole world what they said and hoping that they get canceled. I prefer to call people in, because I know that these conversations are new, and I know that at the end of all things, we need each other. You know, we need each other at the end of all these things. It reminds me of this poem a little bit of Maya Angelou, a Maya Angelou poem. It's called I'm Human. And she says, the brute, the bigot, and the batterer are all human. So what is in them, I have within me to be that person, is what she meant, right? So if we, instead of calling them out and canceling them, it's better to call them into a more enlightened conversation and to be like, you know, what you said wasn't cool. You know, acknowledging that behavior is not cool and it doesn't belong here. It doesn't belong really anywhere in society. I don't know if I answered those questions. Oh, and also maybe just one more thing on this note, because I know some folks are in small communities. That harm reduction space, wherever people are accessing it, we want to think, how can they come in and be anonymous if they want to be? You know, oftentimes I remember going to some spaces and there was one harm reduction space in the whole community, and everybody knew when somebody was going there. They're like, oh yeah, they're going to that door that's across the gym. And it's like, oh, okay, you know, and I know it's hard in small communities, but I think considering where you're going to put those services and how you're going to hand them out is a really good way to make people feel like they're not going to be stigmatized or not going to be like othered when they come to pick those supplies out. So I don't know if I talked about what you wanted, Karina.
No, you nailed it. You talked about first person language, and you also talked about you just highlighted so much going on stigma, and also recognizing that that none of us are biased and stigma free. We all have it. So understanding maybe how it shows up, why it's showing up, and then asking yourself, is that something you want to hang on to? And then why?
So if people have questions throughout this process, do we want to save them for later, or do we want
Well,
to
we're just coming up on the last few slides.
Okay, let's do the end.
Then we have a Q&A. We just wanted to highlight some of the harm reduction strategies that FNHA is involved in. So we know that we have nurse prescribing now throughout the province, and that's
I'm just going to jump in here.
okay. I think you're muted, Karen.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say your audio and Sakina's audio keeps going in and out for some reason.
All right.
Like it's a little wobbly.
Okay, sorry. I'm going to just pull this closer. Maybe. Thank you for letting us know. And I did notice Sakani's. Is that better, Karen?
It is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the harm reduction in communities. I mean, as we move more towards harm reduction strategies, we really want people to access this medication, especially like Suboxone, or for people who have longer standing substance use disorders, they could be maybe inducted on methadone. First Nations Health Authority has been working on something called Raven's Eye SAGE sites. So basically, it's a new framework for delivering overdose prevention sites and really indigenized perspectives, and bringing in those important ways of healing that wouldn't necessarily be represented in other overdose prevention sites. We also know that there's drug checking. There is the Brave app, and the Brave app and the Lifeguard app are just ways that people who are using substances can reach out if they decide to use, and and they're using alone. We know so many people have died alone. And we really want to encourage and promote how we can weave culture into outreach programs to support people in the communities. All right, Jamie, if you could share about what we're doing here, and we're going to be advertising this at FNHA, and you're all welcome to have this poster that was sent. So Jamie, please take it away.
Thank you. So I started kind of communicating with Karina late in the year last year to kind of talk about ways that we could support community, and through courageous conversations before that Karina had had with Sekani and other communities, the need for some support around harms that are happening in community, and the support needed within community was really highlighted. So, Karina sought me out to work to creating this Sharing Our Circle program that I'm going to be hosting once a week in partnership with South Laleham. We're going to have an elder attending with me. So this circle is for loved ones who are impacted by drug poisoning, or people who have loved ones who are in active addiction and need support. It's going to be virtual, so we'll be online every week. We're going to start it off Wednesdays between 7 and 8 p.m. That's like our Pacific Standard Time, because I know that in different parts of the province there's different time zones, so just making sure that it's Pacific Standard Time. My hope for these is that we're going to have up to 10 people per cycle joining our program. They'll I think on here, is there an email on here, Karina?
Oh yeah, my email will be at the end. It will be the last slide for, and also it's attached to the poster that we sent out, this poster.
Okay, perfect. So there's going to be, so you email Karina and she'll send a referral form. So what I'm looking at is to gather information about participants. So it's not going to be a weekly drop-in the beginning, as we kind of figure it out, what's the best way to kind of support community. It's going to be a safe place for people to come and share their stories and find connection and get supported. Like if they need resources, and I'll be able to kind of support them in connecting to resources within their communities, within FNHA, and basically all of the things that we talked about, like the destigmatizing, learning how to find connection in this place where we're hurting and we need healing. This is kind of where we're going to kind of start having those more healing conversations and what that could look like. And so at this point, I don't really have a strong sense of what this is going to be providing to families and to the participants, because I really want it to be, I want it to come from community, and the people that show up are going to be kind of directing the needs and what's going to be provided to them in these circles. So at this point, I don't have like a lot of those kind of direct answers for what it may look like, because I think it's going to, what I want it to look like is I want it to be, I have a mental health background, and I want to bring those resources that I have and kind of bring it to the needs of the community and kind of provide them the support that is going to be meaningful for them. So that's me. That's the Sharing Our Heart talking circle, and I think that's it. Is there anything I missed, Raina?
No.
Thank you, Kenny.
You did great. Thank you so much, Jamie. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so the next slide is with Moms Stop the Harm. And I have a placeholder here for Samantha. And I'm not sure if she was able to hop on, but if you're here, Samantha, just chime in. So we have a partnership with Moms Stop the Harm. Moms Stop the Harm is equivalent to Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. Moms Stop the Harm is relative to any person who has lost a loved one to drug harms, and it says moms, but it's open to everybody. What they do is they support people in their grief and loss, and they provide Healing Hearts Canada. It's a book. Right now, the Holding Hope Canada is supporting a loved one who is in active use. And we know that a lot of times family members can be secretive, or they hold shame, or they're embarrassed to talk about it. And once again, in the next webinar that we're holding with the First Nations Health Directors in 2 weeks, we have people who have lost a loved one to the drug crisis, and also we're speaking more openly about things that people in community feel like they feel is necessary for health and wellness. So Samantha, who isn't here right now, she is the Indigenous Strategy Lead. So if individuals are looking to maybe start their own Moms Stop the Harm, or how does that look, or they have interest in coming together and supporting other family members because of their own experience of grief and loss, they're encouraged to do that. And I can have these resources. All right, so we have questions and answers.
A little bit about it, Karina, about this. I just wanted to let people know that I am somebody who has lived experience, and I do have been doing tons and years of work of being able to navigate my safety. So please ask the questions that are on top of your minds. I am totally open. Karina and Jamie are both here as well, and we will try our best to answer your question. And we do have, if people want to raise their hand and unmute.
Just bring your computer a little bit closer to your phone, because you're glitchy a little. Thank you. All right, so I've seen a hand up. Was that Regina? Yes, Regina. Oh, and then we, okay.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Regina. I'll help moderate.
Hi, thanks, Karina. And Social Development Manager had his hand up as well. I had it in the chat. I just wanted to maybe talk a little bit with Sakani, or ask her words on, on to educating the elders in our community on their stigma that they hold, and the labeling that they do when it comes to transgender, and drug use. And pretty much, I guess, Sakani, your experiences with that, because elders hold so much of a, authoritative figure in our communities, and sometimes it's really difficult to, hey, there's two of you now. But yeah, that was my question. And maybe Sakani, if you could just elaborate on that or share your experiences, because I find it difficult in my community here.
Sorry, I rejoined from my phone because I feel like my data works better than my Wi-Fi. I hope this is better. And I feel like my microphone works better with my phone. I still have the other one on because I can read the questions. But yeah, Regina, to be honest with you, I've had these conversations when we've been, because I've been doing this work now for 4 years now, where we've been kind of developing workshops to address the stigma within workspaces for various organizations. And we work directly by, with, and for people who are actively using substances. When it comes to elders, it was honestly a hard one because, as you know, a lot of elders and folks who have rent to residential school are identifying as Catholic and are Catholic. And, oftentimes, some religious beliefs can really seep into society and create a lot of stigma and a lot of othering, you know, by way of holding people to a moral standard. I'm trying really hard to be as polite and as possible around this conversation, because I myself was raised Catholic, and I am not Catholic anymore. I don't identify as Catholic anymore, but those are my personal beliefs and reasons, right? But a lot of elders would often, you know, say things like, you know, using tough love, you know, and I know from experience, like, we watched my brother die on the streets. Okay, we used tough love on him, and that didn't do anything for him but drive him further away onto the dark street where he died alone of an overdose. So I know that tough love doesn't work, you know. And we would often hear other things like, oh, you're not allowed to touch medicine, or you're not allowed to participate in ceremony, you know, if you're using substances, which to me is a little bit crazy. You know, I want to respect everything, and I want to respect elders. That's where that conversation with elders gets hard, because, you know, we want, on one hand, we need to respect them. On the other hand, we need to be able to move into kind of like a new era of things, because like our old way of living and thinking, it didn't, we weren't suffering, we weren't disenfranchised. We weren't dying of substances daily. We weren't medicating ourselves with substances that are harming our societies. It's not the same anymore, you know, and we need to have elders on board, because I feel like when I was going through my wellness journey, I needed elders to guide me. I needed to participate in ceremony and have medicine around me, so that I know that I have an identity and I have something that is attaching me to my ancestors that are, like, you know, a million years ago, right? That to me was so important and so integral into my wellness and my healing journey. So like having those conversations are definitely really hard, and definitely a lot of work needs to be done there, but not just with our elders, with our whole community, right? So yeah, I mean, like, Karina, do you have it? Do you want to take a shot at the question?
Yeah, I think you're right on when we're talking about educating and just creating a safe space for people, like, not to feel ashamed if they have that perspective of abstinence, because we understand where that comes from. We know it's because they're scared and they fear, by accepting that, then it is kind of going against, then they're taking part in contributing, where in fact we know from this current drug crisis, things are not the way they used to be. We have had, you know, I think the big book was written in the 40s. I think the NA book was written in the 60s. The abstinence-based model isn't fit for our current drug crisis. So we have to release attachment to that model and come in with compassion and kindness. And if people want to be abstinent, and if there's a glitch that, yeah, I'm going to give everything up and be abstinent, that's their journey. If somebody wants to use Suboxone, and that's going to keep the person from hurting themselves, from hurting others, and just maybe finding that place within themselves that Sekani was talking about. Who am I? How do I fit in? And people essentially just want to be loved. And it couldn't be further from the truth if we look at people who are gravely impacted with substance use disorder. They don't feel loved. Oh, we got some more questions here. We still have plenty of time, so I feel like we're doing really good for time, Karen. So thank you so much for helping us with this.
I have a question here. I have a question, please.
Yes.
First of all, I'm Clifford Inimba from Sketchison Indian Band. I'm the social development manager. I'm also sorry for being late to this meeting because I had chief and council. Oftentimes, I have seen stigma somehow being wrongly addressed. It has been wrongly addressed because stigma is a type of isolation on somebody who have a condition, and oftentimes it's like the issue of stigma have been wrongly addressed or wrongly directed or wrongly channeled. A lot of the times, the experts, people like you and I, will want to talk to those stigmatized about stigma. When in reality, for me, we should be addressing people like the elders that were mentioned earlier, the Catholic Church that was mentioned earlier, or whosoever is stigmatizing somebody or some people. I'm not sure if I am being understood here. Because a lot of the times we want to address stigma to those involved, those being stigmatized.
Mm-hmm.
Some
Yeah.
people have been stigmatized, be it a drug addict, be it some LGBT person, be it anybody. They have been stigmatized.
Mm-hmm.
And so the message of stigma for me should be directed, addressed, and channeled towards those who stigmatize these people.
Yeah.
Should we have flyers? Should we have posters? Should we have messages?
Mm-hmm.
We know those who stigmatize against the order.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if I'm making sense.
No, you completely are, and thank you so much.
So this address, this campaign, if you like, this advert or publication, publicity, whatever you may call it, should be channeled to the churches. Somebody spoke, I think Sir Kenny spoke about elders. If you look at my color, you know where I am from. No question asked, am I right? And so these are the elders who would dig their legs or their feet. People like my grandma in blessed memory, my mom, my dad in blessed memory, and all those people who would say no, no, no. And
Yes,
heaven can come down, no. So if we are talking of stigma in the society, in the community, these are the people who should channel our campaign.
Yes.
So,
thank you so much. What we really are, why we're doing this is because I appreciate you saying that we need to get into community. So I'm going to provide you my email. And if you like, we would love to come to your community and do this work. Because what we're trying to do is inform people. That's why we're here. We're ready to dive in. So I'm so grateful you brought up, yeah, this does need to be addressed. And everybody is impacted by stigma.
Come to Sketchessin Indian Band. I am here.
Okay,
the door is widely open for you guys.
Thank you so much. Is there, do you see more questions, Sakani?
I don't see any more questions, but if anybody has any more questions, please feel free to just raise your hand or to come and ask them. I can talk a little bit about what, what you mentioned. I think that, oh, am I muted? Oh, no, I'm not. I think that definitely you're right. And that's why we're here, so that we can connect with you folks who are the health managers, and you folks can decide like what and who needs these kind of workshops. And then we can come in to deliver them. One of the other things that I did on one of my other hats that I wore was we developed workshops for community services and people who are providing services, so that we can come in and hold conversations about stigma and how it's showing up in society and what to do to address it, because it's a difficult conversation. Because we don't want to just tell people, like, I don't want to go to the person down the street and say, you know what, you're stigmatizing this person, you need to leave. We can't do that, right? We need each other, we need them as much as they need us. And that's one thing I noticed, like through my own journey with my family. I often thought that my life experience and what I had to do to get drugs would affect them somehow. So oftentimes I would stay away from them and I wouldn't go near them. But in the reality of all things, after talking to them and after not owning that shame anymore, I realized that actually they needed me just as much as I needed them.
So beautiful. Thank you. All right. So I have a question from Regina, and I also see Samantha made it to talk about Mom Stop the Harm. So I'll first of all go to Regina and then Samantha.
Thanks, Karina. It was more of a comment on Sakani, like speaking about he needed his family just as much as his family needed him. I have a similar experience with my nephew, and I want to run and save him. And I know I can, and maybe, come to Psychus. I'm definitely going to hook up with you, but maybe to share, something like really quick. How can I can't help everyone, but how can, they don't want to come to the health center, like you said, Sakani, and it's true. They don't, they feel judged, they feel ashamed, they feel what they feel, and us here as health workers, we want to help them. Come in, we can help you, and then they still stay away. So maybe if you want to brush on that, Sakani, that would be great. It would be helpful for me and probably everybody here. Thank you.
I'm about to unmute my laptop again. Sorry. And I prefer feminine pronouns, so she, her. Sorry about that. I should have made that clear. I know that I am a trans two-spirited person. I don't mind owning the masculine part of me. And actually, I was going to talk about toxic masculinity earlier, because I was raised and socialized as a man and as a boy. And I know how much that affects our society too. Everything seems to compound and affect our society so much. Things like toxic masculinity, you see it everywhere and it shows up in mainstream society. But when it affects us who are already disenfranchised and oppressed, it's so much more prevalent and so much more held at a standard of like, this is the glue that holds our fabric together. We're toxic and that's how we're going to be for the rest of our lives. I remember growing up hearing things like, oh, you're that term man up, and one of our leaders actually said it the other day at a speech she was giving and telling people to man up. And I'm thinking like, oh, that's so toxic to our young boys and our men, but terms like that and toxic masculinity has no place and needs to be addressed just as much as so many other things. And, Regina, I feel for you because I'm in my community of my relatives and I do some work on boards with my own community. And let me tell you, like, it's so hard to say where to start. It's like, okay, well, I'll give you an example, like even one from my own life or from my family's life. And, like, we're living in poverty. We don't have a car. We're isolated. We're 2 hours away from the nearest grocery store. My dad and my parents are alcoholics. They're fighting constantly. No one's watching us. How do I myself go out and go to the health center and say like, oh, I need some help? So it's hard to say like, where do we start in society? Where do we start these conversations? And I think that's just it. We have to like start addressing like the need. So what's preventing people from showing up? And, you can find this out by asking them directly. So the people that you want to give services to, you go to them directly, you pay them for consulting with you. And you say, look, we're going to hold some, people used to call them, what do they call them? Like workshops or focus groups. You know, we often come from the point of power. In a lot of places, I worked for the city of Vancouver and other places, and they hired me as a consultant because they're like, that's the work you're doing. You're consulting us on how to serve your demographic and population better. And they paid me what they would pay other consultants. And that empowerment just like made leaps and bounds in my wellness. And I think that that's up for me. When I think of peer work, that would be a place to start. You know, looking and talking to those people, paying them for their time and their consulting with you, and really honoring and taking what they have to say to heart, because there's so much at stake. You know, like we've been our communities have been struggling for way too long.
Thank you.
Now I'm crying when I'm talking about our community, right?
Yeah. Thank you, Sekeni. It was really powerful. So we are able to come into community, and Sekeni has spoken about something that we are working in the Fraser Salish region with 3 communities there. We're starting to build a peer network because they're doing a healing center, and they're really transforming the community to be more inclusive of harm reduction supplies like episodic overdose prevention site and drug checking. And so now we have a community of peers that we're building up for that area to help inform people of the practices. Samantha, yay, I'm so grateful that you're here. And if you could talk about the Mom Stop the Harm and your work.
Hi, everyone. My name is Samantha Bainan. I work for Mom Stop the Harm as a Indigenous strategy lead. I am from the Nisga'a and Tsimshian nations. I was born in Prince Rupert, and I lived there for 18 years, and I had moved a week after I graduated high school, and I came to the Lekwungen territory in Victoria. I have been here for 8 years now, and throughout my journey, I've had 2 daughters, and I am just finishing my degree in education at VIU. So through the last couple years, I'm recently a new author. I write Indigenous literature, and so I just wanted to kind of share a little bit about my experience and who I am, and then kind of like what led me to my work and some support that we offer. So I'm actually 26 years old. I had gotten married when I was quite young, and I had babies young as well. And it didn't really work out, the whole marriage part. Love having babies, but yeah. And when I went to school, I think that was when I started to kind of like learn a little bit about my Indigenous heritage, and things started to kind of resurface that I think I didn't really like know too much about. And I think that I heard a little bit about stigma and kind of where do we start. And so a big part of my passion is, you know, teaching our history, because we have to educate I think those that aren't educated. There's so much biases and stereotypes. And also I wanted to share that I am part European as well. And that actually plays a huge role in, I think, like why I'm here today, and that privilege that carries. And so when I was studying school, I think that we always get taught how maybe many Indigenous children might be experiencing some things at home that could make their education a little bit difficult. And so it was interesting because our university really like kind of pushed that on us. They were like, hey, there's some like Indigenous children, we need to know this before we go into the classrooms. But yet when it was happening in our own classroom, I'm the only First Nations student in my class. It was kind of, when I was going through stuff, it was kind of like, oh, well, you're on your own. Year 2, I had lost my brother to substance use. And that was really hard. And I kind of verbally expressed that to my university, that I was going through challenges. And I really received like little to no support or empathy. And throughout my time in university, it's almost been, I'm going into my 5th year, it's a 5-year program. I would say almost every 6 months, I lose a family member to suicide, to addiction. And so I've never really lost a family member, like an elderly family member during my time. And how is that even possible if the population of Indigenous people in Canada is so low? Why am I the only one in my program that is losing a family member every 6 months? Statistically, that doesn't make sense. But if we look at the history of our people, it makes sense. So I often write kind of explaining this to my history profs, and I'll kind of say like at the very end how I had lost my brother. And I say like, and throughout the history of Canada, and I say, I always kind of end it with a quote that, we're not drug addicts. Sometimes we just want to feel numb because the pain just hurts so bad. The past just hurts so bad. And every day I'm really grateful for why I'm here, because I think that the odds, I think like if you kind of compare my brother and I kind of growing up in the same environment, if we kind of look at these blocks in life, I think that somehow I was able just to kind of navigate through. And he was really close as well. He was accepted into UBC, and he was a lot smarter than I was. He used to edit my papers. And so I think that was the stigma. I think people just thought that he was like, so smart, and like, how could this really happen? And but yeah, again, the pain just hurts, the past hurts so bad. And so I think when he went along his journey, he kind of bumped one of those, because there's so much like layers that like for us, you're just, it's almost like you're gonna almost hit one, and that's really, really sad. So yeah, I think after I had lost him, I made some pretty big changes in my life. I made the decision to get divorced, and I made the decision to kind of progress in my education to kind of help my community and the future generations. So yeah, I ended up applying for the position for Mom Stop the Harm, and I ended up getting it. So I'm really, really grateful for that, because now I could go to school and work online. And yeah, so what we offer at Mom Stop the Harm, we have 2 groups. There's Holding Hope's group and Holding Heart. So the difference between the two is Holding Hope is for loved ones that are still here. So those support groups are really to help loved ones that are still maybe struggling in their addiction. And Holding Hearts is for family members that have lost a loved one that has passed. So what we offer, so an example of my role is right now I'm holding my first event at the Victoria Native Friendship Center on March 17th from 5 to 8 p.m. And I'm just going to be having like an opening circle. And for me, food is really big. So I'm wanting to have like a lot of snacks there, food, elders, and just have like a good, like organic, just support circle. And I really want to emphasize on grief and loss, because for myself, I really struggle with anxiety. I could kind of be up all night. I go through these scenarios in my head consistently. I think I probably have a little bit of PTSD. I did see my brother after he passed. Sorry. And it's really hard, because every day it's like, I wish, I wish like I didn't almost see him. But yeah, I think about him every day. I think about, I don't think throughout like a divorce, throughout, I don't think I felt real pain until I had to hold my dead brother. It was really hard. And I just recently wrote a letter to my university, and I kind of expressed my concerns. And I just kind of said,
I just like, for me, like, you know, you really don't. It's really, really hard. And if I could do anything I can, like if I have to push myself through education, if I have to kind of, you know, work these long hours just so I can maybe take that pain away from maybe like another family, I'll do it. I'm gonna work my ass off for like the rest of like the time I'm here, just to help Indigenous families. It's like, I think that's like what my purpose is. I think everybody has a purpose, and my purpose is to be a mom and to help our Indigenous people. But yeah, until the day I die, that's kind of what I'm gonna do. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Samantha. Your tears are so powerful. Your words were absolutely beautiful. And thank you for sharing your story. And thank you for just opening up and trusting us with your tears.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you.
You know, we have 5 minutes left. I am just going to do back on the screen share just for the final resources. I just wanted to make sure that we were looking at each other as we had questions and answers.
While you're doing that, I believe Lucille has her hand up as well.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I have to say, Karina, Sakani, Regina, and Samantha, I just want to thank you so much for this day, and this presentation has been phenomenal. And I just want to say, Samantha, that I appreciated how you worded that we're not all addicts, and it's just the pains of the past, right? Mm-hmm. And one thing I've done here, and I've done in my other places of work, because it's always just kind of rattled me, because as Native people don't understand us. I always say nobody understands us Indians, that we lose like 20 to 25 people a year in our communities, and the amount of death that we experience is we're connected with every single one in our nation, and whether it's directly or indirectly, we're connected through blood at some point in relationships. And so those losses are so immense and intense. And so whenever I have hiring on of new staff here, I always just bring that to their attention. And it's been, I think, helpful for them to witness even how we tend to our staff. Like last week, you know, because we had an overdose in Vancouver and to fentanyl, and that loss of life is to a young woman. I call her young. She's probably in mid-40s, but she's young to me. And to see how so many people in our health center here were affected. And we have non-Indigenous people here. And I think it's an eye-opening thing for them to witness how we actually tend to each other. And I sent 5 of our staff, from cleaning ladies to ward clerks to nurses and carriers home, because they needed to go take care of themselves, mental health. I don't call HR. I don't do nothing like that. You just go. I don't care what you're going to do. If you're going to go take care of yourself, you're going to go sit and cook for the family, what you're going to do. But I just want you to go walk softly and carefully for the next day. And if you don't come tomorrow, you don't come. So I appreciate you saying that, because I've never really thought of it as that in that way that you had said it. And I appreciate that. And I was thinking too with Andra and Dripa and Truth. Like I don't know which school you go to, but they do have the teams in these places that are dealing with truth and reconciliation. Because I know through UBC that I was part of an advisory there. So it's probably a good idea to get a hold of those people and speak to them.
I think that's what I'm going to do now. And I think the reason for that is because we have progressed in such a great way where we have elders within the classroom, but then there's this almost like this phony side where you kind of see them say it, but they don't act. You know, we do a land acknowledgement, but no one has ever told me what their personal commitment is. No one, you know, goes out into the community without having to post a photo on Facebook, you know, that they're doing this work.
So for me, I'm just kind of, and you could tell like it really bothers them when I say something. I'm as the only First Nations in my program, and I really hesitated sending this letter yesterday, but I thought, you know, that's what they want. Like, that's why everyone's upset, you know, God forbid, you know, a Native girl say something that someone's doing something wrong, but I'm calling them out, and I'm gonna expose them all for what they've been doing. It's just ridiculous, some of the stuff that I've had to go throughout this 4 years. So I'm really happy, and I have some really great allies, and I'm really happy about this, but it's really sad that it even has to kind of get to this point. But
I think you're a treasure and a gift to them as well, because you're bringing something that, you know, they just don't get, no matter how they read it and hear about it, until they're really in it and witness it. I don't think some people really get what it means. So I think you're just them seeing you and feeling your pain with you. That's going to open up so many eyes as well. I mean, you touched me just hearing you and seeing you, you know, we enter into your pain with you, we cry with you. Good care.
Thank you, Lucille. You're such beautiful words. And thank you, Samantha. And thank you, Jamie and Sakani and Karen. And we have so much respect and admiration. Regina, thank you for opening us up. I know it is exactly 12 o'clock. And one thing for sure, I try to stay on time. I'm going to just slide through these support documents just because I wanted to make sure that individuals had access to this. So this is a 24/7. This is for anybody in the province, in the health centers, if they want to get support, like in supporting people with substance use disorder. This is usually for doctors and nurses, but because some health centers don't have access to all the resources, they can call this number. We do talk about not just naloxone and supporting different ways about decolonizing addiction. And these are just examples of other communities that are championing this really good work. And here is my email. Once again, we were really honored and grateful to have the courageous conversation to support your communities. Please reach out, and thank you so much for showing up today with an open heart and an open mind.
Thank you so much, Karina, and everyone for joining and participating today. I just wanted to do a little closing and extend our thanks to Karina, Jamie, and especially Sakani for taking the time, you know, to lead us through this presentation and through some tough conversations. I know it's noon time. I just wanted to what really jumped out for me today was our policy. When you spoke of it, does our policy enforce stigma, judgment, or does it enforce love? It really made me think about, you know, policy here, as well as you said no tough love, you know, tough love ain't gonna get anybody anywhere. And the opposite of tough is soft love. I just want to thank everyone here today for joining, and I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day and you stay safe, you stay all well. Must see.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. So beautiful. Just a reminder, the team is back with us on March the 29th to continue these conversations, courageous conversations.
Thanks,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Thank you, Karen.